It is harvest time for my spruce tree, and I harvest this resin once every 2 years just to give it time to kind of harden up, because I really prefer to harvest these big old chunks that are quite hardened. Can you see this here? Now, resin from trees like pine, fir and spruce, which is what this lovely tree is here in my allotment, is actually one of nature's best toolkits. It can spark a fire within seconds, help to seal a wound in an emergency. It can waterproof tarps and tents, and even glue tools together. It's antiseptic and antimicrobial and antifungal, and it has anti-inflammatory properties too. And it's been used to help clean and seal wounds, as well as soothing burns and insect bites by preventing infection and helping to speed up the healing process. Spruce resin was actually the first ever chewing gum as well, and it was thought to help soothe chest complaints and sore throats. You can actually boil this up into water, skim it off the top, roll it up and let it harden and make yourself a little chewing gum. And it is a bit crunchy at first, but you keep chewing and after a minute it becomes a really, really nice textured chewing gum, and it lasts for bloody ages as well. It's really, really quite interesting. This resin can be burnt as incense as well, and the smoke is thought to purify and protect spaces, and it's really handy for keeping bugs at bay while you're camping. If left undisturbed for millions of years, this resin actually transforms into amber, which is a fossilised gemstone capable of preserving tiny little fragments of history, everything from grains of pollen to flowers and even insects as well. You can actually find it washed up on beaches after a really big storm because it gets dislodged from the seabed. Really cool. This resin is also really great for waterproofing materials as well. It can help to seal seams in tents, and it can help to fix holes in things like jackets and shoes and tarps. So it's really, really useful when you're out camping. And also its really sticky consistency means it's perfect for making into natural adhesives. So you can actually boil this up and mix it with some fine powdered charcoal and some plant fibres, and it makes a really malleable kind of black glue that you can use for all sorts of things. Resin glue is probably one of the most resourceful materials in bushcraft and survival. It is strong and it's waterproof, and it can be made entirely out of natural materials. If you're out in the forest and a piece of your kit develops a tear or a crack, or maybe your knife handle needs reinforcement, then you can just gather up some fresh resin from a nearby tree and melt it over a low flame and use it to repair the damage. There's a big bit of resin down here that I've been saving. Big old hard bit. It's very sticky, this stuff. Beautiful. I'm trying not to get too much on my hand. It's mostly dry. I'm using the spruce needles as a bit of barrier. But there's a big bit there that I want to try and get off. Can't be bothered to go and get my knife. Oh, there we go. The reason that resin is so sticky is because it's made up of compounds called terpenes and resin acids. Terpenes are volatile oils that give resin a sticky texture and that familiar piney smell. When it comes to harvesting resin, it's really important to do it ethically and sustainably, not just for the health of the singular tree, but also for the wider ecosystem that depends on it. Resin is like the tree's first aid kit. When a tree is wounded, whether it be from a broken branch or animal damage or environmental stress, it produces a resin to seal the wound and protect itself from insects and fungi and bacteria. If we take too much of this resin, then we risk leaving the tree vulnerable and damaging its ability to heal. Only take small amounts from trees that are already producing resin naturally. Look for wounds where the resin is freely oozing or is hardened into clumps. Never create new wounds just to harvest resin. Cutting into a tree can harm it, especially if it's a young or already stressed tree. Ethical harvesting also respects the slow process that trees go through to produce resin. It can take weeks or even months for a tree to create enough resin to seal a wound. Bees harvest resin to make propolis for their hives, and other insects depend on resin-covered trees for shelter and food. By harvesting responsibly, we ensure there's enough resin to support the wider ecosystem. So I've got a big log here underneath my bathtub, and you can see loads of little fragments of charcoal from where it's all burnt underneath there. So I'm going to harvest some of that and pop it into my tin. When you mix powdered charcoal into melted resin, it changes the glue in a few different ways. First, it makes the resin less brittle. On its own, pure resin can harden like glass. It's strong, but it's prone to cracking under strain. Charcoal thickens the glue and reinforces its structure, so it holds up better under stress. Charcoal also makes the glue more heat resistant. Pure resin softens in warm temperatures, which can weaken the bond, but when you add charcoal, it stabilises the glue and helps it to maintain its strength, even in extreme heats. Charcoal also helps the glue fill gaps. When resin hardens, it can shrink a little bit, leaving behind tiny voids that weaken the bond. The fine particles of charcoal create a dense and solid matrix within the resin, filling those gaps and improving the overall adhesion of the glue. This also makes it better for rough or uneven surfaces like wood or stone. And that should be enough for what I need it for. So you just need to powder this up now and add it to some melted resin. So here I've just got some fireweed, and this is last season's fireweed that I'm just going to grind up and crush some of the plant fibres out of. The rock's bloody freezing, so I've put a glove on. All of these plant fibres will just help to make the glue a lot less brittle and a bit more malleable. So I'm going to get rid of all of these big stringy bits and kind of pick off all of this fluffy stuff and add a little bit of this, not too much, but a little bit of this to the resin. And yeah, like I say, it just helps it to stop being so brittle. So you can see all of this fluff here. I'll just keep grinding that down until it's a little bit more broken up. When you add shredded bark, grass, moss or any sort of fibrous plant material, it gives the glue a kind of elasticity. Pure resin glue is rigid, which is great for static repairs but not so great for anything that needs to flex or move. Plant fibres act like rebar in concrete, creating a web within the glue that allows it to bend and stretch without snapping. They also help with shrinkage. As resin cools and hardens, it naturally contracts slightly, which can weaken the bond or cause cracking. Fibres help to stabilise the resin, holding everything together as it sets. Right, that should do me nicely. You can use any kind of herbivore poo as well, you know, like rabbits, deer, and break up the dried poo and add that to it, but I don't have any rabbits or deers in my allotment, so I've gone with fireweed fibres. Herbivore dung is surprisingly effective because it's packed with partially digested plant fibres. Dung acts as a natural binder, combining the best of both charcoal and the plant fibres. It adds strength and flexibility while also proving adhesion. The fibrous content gives the glue a more uniform sort of texture, making it easier to apply evenly. And let's be honest, if you are in a survival situation, dung is probably one of the most accessible materials that you'll find. So it's a really great way to reinforce resin glue if you don't have powdered charcoal or plant fibres to hand. So I've got some quite nice pieces there. A few old pieces and a couple of young, stickier pieces too. I'm melting the resin inside a tin because it gets very, very mucky, and I'm putting that tin inside a saucepan because I don't want the direct heat to be on the tin because it's very flammable. So it could go up in flames if it gets too hot. Just let that melt for a little bit. It's doing nicely. Yeah, it's not too hot, that tin. Just wait for that to fully melt, then I'll add my powdered charcoal and my plant fibre. Right, I'm going to mix up some of this powdered charcoal that I've ground up in here, and this is as fine as I could get it with a stick, but it'd be absolutely fine for what I'm using it for. And a little bit of this plant fibre as well. This is the ground up fireweed. I'm only making a little tiny touch of glue, so I'm just going to add in a little bit of powdered charcoal, not too much. Hang on, that's quite hot. Give that a really good mix, stir. That's what it's looking like at the moment. You can see that it cools very, very, very quickly. So you can just whack it back on the fire. So I'm probably just going to add in about this much plant fibre to how much resin I've got. Let me show you. So you can see that it's not loads, so I'm just going to add in a tiny little sprinkle. When you heat up resin, the terpenes become more fluid, making the resin easy to work with. Resin acids are what give the glue its strength and its durability. As the resin cools, the volatile terpenes evaporate, leaving behind a hardened structure that creates a strong bond. This is why resin glue works so well. It starts off sticky so it adheres to surfaces easily, and then it hardens to a durable waterproof seal as it cools. The glue from this was traditionally used to glue blades onto wooden handles, and Jess from Jess Outdoors does still make some of those traditional knives, which is really interesting. I'll link her channel in the description and you can check that out if you're interested. But this is such a cool material, and they call it gold, tree gold. You can see it's absolutely beautiful. Resin glue has been used for thousands and thousands of years, and its applications today are just as relevant as they were in the Stone Age. Neanderthals used resin glue mixed with charcoal to attach flint blades to wooden handles, and Vikings relied on resin to seal the seams of their ships, making them watertight for their long ocean voyages. In North America, indigenous peoples Cree and Ojibwe used spruce resin to waterproof their birch bark canoes and patch holes in tents and clothing. Today, resin glue is still a go-to material for DIY survival gear because it is simple, reliable, and you are almost guaranteed to find it if you venture into conifer woodlands. So you can see that this stuff is lovely and soft, and that plant fibre really does make a difference. I've played around with lots of different recipes. Another good thing to add is a little touch of beeswax as well, but I find that this is absolutely fine if you don't want to add in any extra materials, if you just want to use natural stuff that you can find when you're out and about. So this is the finished product. Lovely little glob of spruce glue. And whenever I need to use this, I can just melt it back down again and then rub it on whatever needs fixing, smear it across, let that dry, and it makes a really solid glue. You can already hear it's pretty solid. It's still warm, but you can already hear that it's pretty solid. So that's going to dry super hard. And yeah, this is a really quick and easy way to make your own natural glue.